Well, and that's just smart, being able to surrender into not trying to do everything yourself.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
If you really got into being a carpenter because you love the bookkeeping, sure. But I have yet to meet that person.
You love the paperwork.
Yeah.
Right.
Welcome, everybody, to the Fine Home Building Podcast. We are coming at you live from the RDJ show. That stands for Remodeling, Deck Expo, and JLC Live. We are in Nashville, Tennessee. It is Thursday morning, and this will be one of about 4 shows. Maybe
Exactly 4.
Exactly. Well, you never know. We might get inspired.
Yeah.
But these will be our extra shows. So you'll get these along with your regularly scheduled Friday Fine Home Building Podcast. And today I'm with Rob, who you just heard.
Hello.
And we also have a couple of special guests here. We have Andy Moore, one of our Fine Home Building ambassadors.
How's it going?
Good. And we also have Scott Park from Simpson Strong-Tie.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Scott's going to walk us through a couple of products that they're pushing at the show.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of new exciting products out, really just launching right before the show. So we've got a new fascia screw. So one of the common problems that we come up with and get a lot of requests for is when you're attaching deck fascia on, it's a lot thinner than a deck board, and there's a lot of shear that goes on because of the long runs, and there's no flex when you mount that right up to another board.
What do you mean there's a lot of shear because of the long runs?
Yeah, so, a fascia board might be 12 or 16 feet long, because you don't want a joint. You want a good smooth appearance,
sure.
But you're mounting that right on top of maybe a 2x8 or a 2x10, along the length versus, laying a deck board on top of a joist. So the joist, as a deck board might expand or shrink, can kind of move with it because they're not strong in that direction.
Yep.
But that 2x8 or 10 on your fascia that's backed up to it can't move. It doesn't grow with or shrink with the fascia.
So what were builders experiencing? Like nails are just shearing off?
Yeah, so you might have screws that just shear off.
Really?
Or the fascia might oil can out, essentially buckle. Yeah. And then it would try to pull over the heads because the board is generally like a ½ inch.
And we're talking about PVC or, a synthetic fascia
mostly
boards,
a synthetic, like a composite. PVC you do see in the white in some regions, and then most of the manufacturers such as Trex and TimberTech have a composite that matches their deck boards perfectly, made out of the same material, just thinner and wider pieces for fascia.
Okay.
So kind of the solution is you really want to overbore that hole, essentially. So when you put in the screw, there's a clearance around the screw so that the material can move independent of the screw.
But it's not actually like a slotted hole, right?
It's really just overboard. So it's essentially just a lot larger clearance hole for the fastener to go through, and then you have to have a larger washer type head.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's not so much that the head needs a wider hole.
Right.
It's that the shank, let's say that the shaft of the screw is 1/8 of an inch, and you want like a 1/4 of an inch for it to sit in, so it can wiggle around. Okay,
right,
cool.
Exactly. And that gives you that space for it to shrink and expand with the temperature change that'll happen with composites.
Boy, I can see that being really handy for other stuff besides fascia too.
Yeah, I suppose there could be other applications that'll develop out of that, as we go forward. Right now that's been the demand, and what we did is there are a couple of solutions on the market. We approached it a little different with a 316 stainless. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a 316 offering. You don't use a lot of screws on the deck. It's a fascia product, so it just goes around the perimeter. So you might use 60 to 100 screws. So it's not a big volume. It's just a problem. So what we did was we just chose to just go 316 stainless only. The stainless really gives you that extra ductility, allowing it to flex, and then 316 you can just use it in any environment. So you don't have to be worried about am I coastal, am I waterfront.
Right. One size fits all.
One size fits all. And then we have the separate bit.
I got the bit here for us.
Try to describe this a little bit to people listening in, but essentially it drills the hole through the fascia, and then it has a stop on it, and it actually creates a counter bore for the head, because we are dealing with a washer head, pancake head type screw. Which is not going to countersink into a composite. It's just going to stop because the composite's too hard. So you actually need to create a counterbore recess for that head to
kind of like
into.
Like a roofing nail, but a screw.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I'm confused because if the shaft of the screw, I'm looking at the bit, and I don't know if Jeff, if you can even see this up on the camera there. I forgot to tell you, Jeff's here. Hey everybody, Jeff's here.
Hey Jeff.
So clearly the drill bit itself, like I said, creates a wider hole for the shank.
Right.
But at the head of the screw looks like it'll be a pretty tight countersink. Like the hole that it gives you through the fascia is about the same size as the head of the screw.
Right. Yeah.
So how does it really allow for movement then?
But because as the screw, it'll actually tilt a little bit. It'll bend. As there's so much force, it'll actually bend the screw a little bit. So we want it to be kind of tight on the hole around the head so that you have a nice appearance and it kind of blends in. But you want that down at the base where essentially where the fascia meets the rim board. You want that clearance right there so that there can be a little shift.
I notice you're not using a bit that has a quick release for an impact driver.
Right. We're kind of directing people to use a drill.
Really?
We've talked about whether we're going to put a quick release in there going forward. That may be something we add. At this point, we kind of said, let's just go with a drill because we want to kind of limit when you put the fascia screw in, with an impact, with a drill, you can set your clutch to kind of a certain torque. With an impact, you're kind of, you just got to kind of listen for it to stop when the hammering kind of picks up. And you don't want to over tighten it. So that you want when you put the screw in, you want to leave it just snug so that it's snug, but you don't want to crank it down so that it can't move.
It's purposeful. And I think you guys, now that you're mentioning that, I remember something about that for your long structural screws too, right? You tend to want people to not use an impact driver for those.
Right. Yeah.
For the same sort of reason?
A couple of reasons. When you're dealing with screws that are coated, obviously the impacting is hard on the coating, so it can chip away at the coating.
Oh, I see.
But also, you just don't want the tendency to just really bury the head in. I mean, the idea is to just put it flush. So
okay. I have one more question. It looks like a star drive.
Yeah, I was curious about
that. It's a T20 star drive, and then we offer it in 12 colors. So. And
the length?
The length is 1 3/4 inches, so it's number 8 by 1 3/4.
So we want to just basically go in enough to hold it, but we're not going too deep.
Yeah, you don't. Well, and you've got 1.5 inches of rim board, so you don't want to go out the other side. So.
And it looks like a fine thread, which also surprises me. I would think going in framing lumber, you'd want a coarse, but
it works well with the fine thread to give you a pretty good pull out on that. So
very cool. So are most guys just fastening that up with a couple of nails and then they're coming back and drilling the holes?
Yeah, well, actually no. Most of the guys they'll clamp it up or they'll kind of hold it up. Some guys might use a composite screw in there to hold it. I mean, generally what they were doing before was just fastening it with composite screws, the same as they would the decking. And it was just leading to a lot of problems with it coming off.
That's really cool. I had no idea that was. I don't do a lot of decks anymore, so I had no idea that was even a problem.
Yeah.
And I like it when I find out about problems and then they get solved in the same conversation.
Right.
So
that's great. It doesn't usually work that way, right?
What's the ballpark pricing on these?
I think it's like in the ballpark of $20 to $25 for a pack. It's like 80 to 100 screws.
Cool.
I think it's 80 screws in ours. So
tell me again the colors. Oh, you got a bunch of colors.
Yeah, we got a bunch of colors.
It's
12 different ones. You got browns, anywhere from browns to reds to grays and whites.
And so how does that work? I can go onto your website and say, hey, I'm using Trex so-and-so, and you'll say that's the one that matches?
Yeah, we have a printed color match guide as well as an online color guide, so you can go in there and select, hey, this is what I'm using, and it'll tell you the color, and it's the same color system we use on the deck screws. So if you're using a deck screw on the deck or the stairs or whatever, it's the same color scheme. So
very cool. Any talk about these being available in longer lengths for guys who want to use them for let's say PVC trim on their house?
Yeah, no, we haven't. We're looking at other solutions for PVC trim. So
what a political answer that was.
We're looking into it.
We have some stuff in the works for that that we're not ready to talk about just yet, but soon.
That's all I need to hear. It's coming, boys. All right, what else you got for us?
One of the other things that we're seeing a lot more of, we see a lot of demand for stainless anymore. It just continues to grow. People are really recognizing how corrosion is a big problem when it comes to pressure-treated lumber, and how it's not the pressure-treated lumber of 15 years ago. And there's a lot of things going on in there with the copper additions and things that are making it really hard on galvanized fasteners and coated fasteners that, while do the job, some guys are just becoming more and more cautious because of things they've seen. And especially when you don't know the exposure conditions, if they're going to put down icing salt and if they're going to, clean it with, who knows what type of pressure treating or what type of cleaners they're using on there that, soak down through and get under the boards. And
so it's essentially, if you want to make sure you're covered,
yeah,
you go
exactly.
stainless.
Yeah,
and it's funny you bring that up because decks are so expensive now.
Right.
I mean, it used to be that you buy the pressure treated lumber to frame it, pressure treated planks to put down on it, and then you hand nail it, and then we moved to screwing, and that was a nice improvement. But now you're talking about like the fasteners themselves are a huge part of the cost of building a deck, and to have to come back and redo a deck because of that is like,
it's also
just makes you as a builder look like an idiot,
It's also just trends and styles that have evolved too. I mean, you just mentioned, PT decks, but you look at the decks that are being built now, what customers are asking. You were talking about the PVC trim and the fascia boards, like fully trimmed out synthetic decking,
special railings.
Yeah, special railings.
Oh yeah, we're tens of thousands of dollars easy on a small deck.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember the first deck I built. Was with my dad. I was like 12. We built our family deck. And you went to the lumber yard and you bought a stack of lumber and you came home with a box of 16-penny nails. And you built a deck.
The nails were almost like an afterthought. Like, oh yeah, we need nails.
Right.
Now it's like we have half the budget in fasteners.
Yeah, I mean, and really, it seems like it because fasteners are expensive. Screws are expensive, stainless is expensive, but when you start talking about the deck is now $40,000 or $50,000 you might spend, or even if it's $20,000, if you spend $500 or $1,000 on fasteners, is that really you really want to put a $25,000 deck at risk because you chimped out and went,
That's
and went
the thing,
absolutely.
It's just not worth it anymore.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of demand for stainless, and as we've seen that grow, we've seen a lot of demand for structural stainless. So what we've done this year is actually expanded one of our most popular lines. So a really popular line of deck screws and general purpose stainless screws that we've had for years, but we've seen so much demand for what do you do when you need to, fasten this post or do these things, when you need a 6-inch screw. We need a 6-inch by 12 or 6-inch number 14 screw. Well, then you got a couple of problems because stainless is soft, so it doesn't want to drive.
Right.
It wants to twist off when you get into hard PT, and really southern pines are really tough. So we have this fastener that's got this really innovative ridge, and I don't know if you can see it on here, but it's got this ridge on the side. As well as if you look down the shank, you can see it has a spiral down the shank, and the threads are actually square. We call this a box thread or a square thread.
Look at that.
It's a helix like a standard thread, but it's not round on the outside. It's
like
square.
You ground it off square.
Almost like you ground it off square, on four sides. And it reduces the driving torque by about 35%. I mean, it's dramatic on how much easier they drive. And we've seen such a demand that we've expanded that out, said, hey, let's use this technology in our larger fasteners. And we went in and load rated, our number 12s and number 14s, like 3 to 6 inches, and added all those into the line so that there's a lot of options now if you need to do some structural fastening, you need to put some beams together, and whatever you might be, now you have some loads. The engineer has loads they can go to.
Right, and what's kind of cool about this is that because it's got the it's got the like a bugle shaped head with the star drive. If you were going to go to a 6-inch screw, typically, I think you'd probably jump to something like a structural screw that has a big,
you might go with a stainless flag, a hex head.
And you're not. I mean, you could almost leave this exposed as part of a design detail, and it would look good.
Yeah, for sure.
Or you could countersink it and use a regular plug without too much trouble. Where if you get into the other structural ones, you're gonna hit snags with that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's some of the interesting things going on. I think last time we talked, we really was about hidden fastening and with the Ebtie Premium, and it's really taken off. Guys are really, really embracing the guide, the drill guide, being able to give you a very accurate angle.
And for anybody who doesn't know, the Ebties they're one of the originals.
It is the original hidden fastener.
It looks like a black biscuit.
Yeah.
But they've really, over the years, have just continue to evolve.
Yeah, we've continued to evolve it, and you can see here this has this metal plate now that's now inserted in to give you some additional uplift.
Yep.
It also just helps with installation to make it more bulletproof when you're putting it in. That, you know, it gives you kind of that stopping point. As drills have gotten more and more high torque, it's harder to find that stop. So it really does a good job of that. And then we added in these expansion features on the bottom, so you can see these little rabbit ear looking things. We kind of do it in a few different ways depending on the spacing, but they give you your deck spacing, but they also allow for expansion of your boards as they absorb water. With any kind of natural decking, you know, it's going to change as the humidity and the changes, and it gives you that space for that to expand out. And they just compress down and then spring back.
This is the best version of the ebb tie that I've seen.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it always worked fine.
Right.
But like you said, it had that problem of it was easy to blow the screws right
through it. Exactly.
And with the live edge, or what is that what you're calling it? That's what it used to be called, I think. I can't remember now. The little
live
wings.
cylinder.
Live cylinder.
Yeah.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
It does, right? It is fancy. So yeah, and we really just expanded out our kit and our kit. I can't get the guide to come out, but you know, when we launched this with the metal plate, we also launched this drill guide because one of the problems was always misinstallation. And if you don't drive the screw at the right angle, the right place, your spacing doesn't come out right. You know, or the screws are hard to put in. So this guide really comes into the edge of the board, and then we include the drill bit now, which is a quick release now, so you can use it with impacts. And it really brings you right in and drills through the edge of the board, because when you're dealing with Ipe, other hardwoods, you can't just drive a screw right through. It's either going to break the screw or it's going to split the wood right off because it's so dense.
Right.
So you have to pre-drill. So this really gives you an exact placement of your bit. This fits right into the groove on the side of the board, places not only your spacing front to back, but your angle precisely.
Now, are you recommending that people just use this guide for when they're working with really hardwoods? I mean, if I'm putting down...
Yeah, generally we only recommend the ebb tie for hardwoods and cedar and redwood because they're pretty stable wood. We're looking at other woods that we might include in the future. But because you're so close to the edge, at this point we're still leaning towards pre-drilling, just because as that board wants to shrink and move, you don't want that to split off. You know, normally with a deck screw, you're an inch and a quarter from the edge.
Right.
With this, you're right at the edge, you know, so you don't want that to just split off. So putting that little clearance in there keeps that from being predisposed to splitting already.
And any chance that we're going to see something like the collated systems that you guys have, the kind of the stand-up drills with the...
Yeah.
Can we make that work with this system?
There's a potential we can make that work with this system, yeah. So it's definitely things we're looking at in the future on how we further expand that market. We're seeing a lot more demand for hidden fastening, and we're continuing to, you know, educate ourselves at what the problems are, what the installers are facing, and really try to come up with solutions on what the best way to solve those are.
So I'm sure you can't tell us too much about what you got going on in the labs over there at Simpson Strong-Tie, but can you hint for us at the areas that you guys are looking at that people are...
Well, I can tell you one question that has come up. You know, we're talking about hidden fastening. You know, it's not really addressed when you start looking at lateral force on the deck. It's not really addressed on what you do when it's hidden fastening, because the historical information is really based on face fastening the deck boards, which add a lot of stiffness to your deck itself, which you don't have when you hidden fasten.
So what you're talking about is when you traditionally nailed or screwed down boards right to the deck joists, it added a lot of resistance for the deck to rack side to side.
Exactly.
But when you switch to these, which only have one screw each, they don't do anything to keep the deck frame from moving side to side.
Yeah, well, they do.
They don't
because
do as much.
You know, you have half as many screws.
Yeah.
So it's not really been checked on exactly how much that effect is. But what we've seen that's even a little bit different is a lot in the composite world. They don't go through the board at all.
They go straight down.
They go straight down often, you know, when you're dealing with there's a plastic clip that goes straight down into the joist. So you don't really gain any connection of the deck board to the joist in that shear plane. So
what are we talking here? Are we talking a second kind of piece of
hardware?
Well,
we're talking about that. You know, we're starting to see some jurisdictions that are asking, you know, or they're putting in requirements.
I remember talking to David Finkenbinder about that, who works for you guys. And I mean, you can't accomplish it with diagonal bracing, right? But not a lot of people know.
Well, yeah, we've seen some jurisdictions in the New England area that are adding in a requirement for diagonal bracing
because of Mike Gerton.
We won't name any names, you know. But what we don't know and what hasn't really been studied yet is how much effect that has, or is that the right solution? Because, like I said, all the testing on ledger attachment and the lateral requirements of, you know, essentially hold downs that connect you into your floor joists were all based on the assumption that your boards were face fastened. So we're really studying what effect that has and how much you need to make up with bracing. So.
And what about ledgers, which I know was a huge focus over the last decade.
Right.
So do we feel like we got that licked? We're good to go?
I think we're good on ledgers.
Okay.
I think as long as you don't just nail them on and you use the screws at the prescribed spacing with the structural options that are out there. I mean, you know, just ourselves, we have like 4 different options, anywhere from, you know, regular coated screws to hot dip galvanized screws to stained 316 stainless steel structural screws. I mean, we've kind of covered the gamut on ways you can screw a ledger on there. So
I'm trying to think. I just realized I should probably be using this time to put in special requests for things that I'm frustrated
that you need and want for your own projects.
Send me an email on that. You know, attach a volume.
You don't want to do it right here?
No, I'd rather keep that between us.
Okay.
One of the other things that's just come out that might be of interest to listeners is our deck connection guide.
Okay.
And really, this is really targeted towards the homeowner, do-it-yourselfer, as well as the contractor and small deck builder. But it really gives a lot of information on, you know, inspecting your deck, you know, build a safe, strong deck. It talks about the different connections, which we'll do when we do our deck collapse over here. We'll talk about the different joints and what you need to protect.
Are you guys doing a deck collapse at this show?
We are doing a deck collapse.
When is that?
Yeah, when are you doing that?
I should have come with that time. It's today, I believe. I think it's twice. I think it's once each day.
That's awesome.
So we'll do a deck collapse. They'll have a little
we got to come get some video of that.
Seminar over there where they'll talk about, you know, what all the connections are, post to beam, ledger.
How do you collapse
joist. It? It's a trick.
It's magic.
It's really a simulation of what happens when the ledger pulls away from the house, which is the most common deck failure, and just seeing how that affects the deck.
Is that guide available online?
This is actually our most downloaded piece of literature on our website.
That's one. I mean, like, build a safe, strong deck is one of the most popular pieces of content we ever do. People just. It flies off the shelves when people hear that.
Yeah, so this is a really great guide the way they laid this out, because it gives you a lot of stuff on how to build a safe deck. You know, one of my favorite sections is it's not about selling products. It's about telling people how to make it safe. And it goes through on the left panel of each page. It tells you what the building code says you need. It says you need this for this connection, you know, and then we give you solutions. You know, we have, like I talked about, all the different structural screws, post bases. We got 2 pages of ways you can make this connection, whatever works for you. But this is what the code says makes it safe, and that's what you need to do. And then however you do that is your choice, but this is what we can offer you to do that. And then in the back, we cover a lot about corrosion and mitigating corrosion risk and what you need to watch out for there, as well as how to inspect the deck you have and say, do I need to retrofit? Do I need to replace? Is my deck fine the way it is? And it gives you a lot of knowledge on how to inspect the deck that you have to make sure that the deck on your house is safe.
And that's a big selling point for a guy building decks. I mean, to even be able to have that guide and hand it to the customer and say, I want you to know that everything I'm doing on this deck is up to snuff, and feel free to flip through this and double check me. You know, like, this is proofs in the pudding here.
Yeah, and I know a lot of home inspectors that use this as well.
Yep.
Not only for their inspection, but they give it to the homeowner and say, look, I'm not just making this up.
Yeah.
You know, look at what the code says.
Why we're
you
doing
need to advise the people that are trying to sell you this home, or the home that you're selling, that this isn't really safe.
I had, on my last deck build, I had the building inspector pull out that exact guide and tell me I needed one of these 3 options. When he pointed to a section and said you needed to do one of these.
You didn't do it right the first time?
Right.
No, it was during the code, during the permitting process.
Yeah.
Great. Love it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it right.
As long as you did it right in the end.
It had, a roof. I had to deal with uplift.
That's a problem. People don't.
The corner post, the post base had to be upgraded to a bigger one in order to handle the uplift.
Uplift. Yeah, that's a lot of things when you start getting, above the prescriptive level of just a low deck, and you start getting into above a certain height or multi-stories, a lot of things start coming into play. And really,
and it really is how far does the local inspector want to go too? It's like, we're really sensitive about uplift here, so you have to do this, and that might not be the same thing the next town over. So it's really, it's not even a sign of not doing it right anymore. Like builders shouldn't feel bad about that. It's just different everywhere you go.
That's very true.
The code's really enforced based on how the local jurisdiction sees the need for it in their area.
Right, and that's a good message for homeowners that are hiring builders to do things, is don't feel like you're discouraged if the permitting process takes a little while. That's
what it's there for.
That's pretty normal for the builder to have to change things.
The other thing I would advise is, some jurisdictions are not strict on the code at all. It's not uncommon to still see connections that are made with toenails for joists or ledgers,
screws, screws driven
deck
through
screws.
the joist hangers.
Yeah, I mean those types of things that really aren't safe, but can get through. That don't count on your lowest local jurisdiction to necessarily be strict on safety and enforcement of the code, because that may not be the case. In other areas, it may be extreme process to get through the permitting process. In others, it's a quick check and we've always done it this way and it seems fine, and
back
it
of
may
the napkin.
Right. So, it's really up to the homeowner to ensure that what they're getting is, and what they're paying for is really great for their family.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of stuff you guys are pushing.
It is a lot. We're doing a lot.
So we're going to definitely make sure we get over there to get some footage of that deck collapse either today or tomorrow. I hope it's not timed out for the same time we have the podcast.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll get
somebody
over
there.
What time it is.
And you'll head over there no matter what.
I'll check it out.
All right, great.
So we'll throw some video up on the blog post, the show notes page, finehomebuilding.com/podcast, and also on the social channel, so on Instagram and Fine Home Building. Scott, it's great. Thanks for swinging by and talking to us about it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime.
Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Cool.
And we're back. We had to take a quick little break there so that Scott could get to his next meeting. But now we're here and we are fully focused on Andy Moore.
How's it going?
I'm all right.
Good.
Andy is one of our Fine Home Building ambassadors. He is on Instagram at
Modern Oak.
Modern Oak Construct. Just Modern Oak?
Modern_Oak.
Oh, Modern_Oak. And you are from, where are you from?
From Lynchburg, Virginia.
Virginia, that's right. We have still, I only say that because we have still yet to get down to one of your projects to shoot photos.
Yes, absolutely. That needs to happen.
And I really want that to happen. You have a really interesting page because it's kind of quiet. It's not really like large. It's not over the top self-promotional. You're not trying to like make yourself this huge Instagram star. It's just like quiet, like daily work,
super
nice,
solid
tight.
Quality work.
Yep.
It's
absolutely.
I kind of like that.
That's just like, not to go too far off the rails immediately, but when people talk about like what it's like to become an ambassador, and it's like not really about the number of followers you have. It's like how you represent yourself and the work that you do.
Yeah.
So that's why Andy's on the show, and that's why he's an ambassador. Not because he's got like mega followers and just crushing it every hour of every day, which I'm sure you are, but at least you're not telling us every hour, every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're going to be in our emerging professionals event later, where we're going to ask you some questions about your business. But for some people that aren't going to be at this event, at the emerging professionals event, and are listening to it in the comfort of their car while driving, tell us about your business. You do mostly interior finish carpentry?
We do a little bit of everything. We do new construction, we do renovation and remodels, and then we do anything that relies heavily on millwork install.
Okay. So how many people are we talking here?
I've got a full-time guy and a part-time guy.
Okay.
And myself. And so I'm still wearing the bags every day and doing a lot of the work and training the guys in the way I like to do things, and trying to, with the whole Keep Craft Alive initiative, trying to, train them in the way I like to do things and the way I want to do it.
And passing it along to the next.
And passing it along, that's right.
Are you loving wearing the bags, or do you have visions of maybe changing that in the future? Or?
Maybe eventually, but I do like being on site. I like having my hands on everything still.
Yeah.
I feel like in my area anyway, it's really nice to be super involved in the project itself. A lot of the contractors in my area are not, so they're only as good as the guys they have working for them.
And and that's something I'm going to challenge Sean on later when we talk about this, because this question will definitely come up.
Oh, absolutely.
Is when does it make sense to run your company versus being a worker in your company? And to me, it comes down to, well, what do you want to do every day? Like, it doesn't always have to be all about the company always needs to grow. It always needs to get to the next level. I mean, maybe you really just want to be a carpenter.
Right. Well, and
that's what you like.
And to Sean's point, he brings up, hiring someone to do the bookkeeping and that kind of aspect, as opposed to hiring a project manager and then you just oversee, things. So you can still be involved and hire other people to do those portions of the projects.
Well, and that's just smart, being able to surrender into not trying to do everything yourself.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
If you really got into being a carpenter because you love the bookkeeping, sure. But I've yet to meet that person.
You love the paperwork.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So how many projects a year are we talking?
We're growing in that capacity, so it's hard to put a number on that right now, but we have probably 5 or 6, some that have just finished, some that are getting started, and some that are kind of in the books.
Very
ready
cool.
to get started.
Very cool. And I know you've been a Fine Homebuilding reader for a long time.
Absolutely.
So what kinds of things are you looking to get out of the magazine? What are your favorite parts of it? What can we do more of?
Well, with my finished carpentry background, I'm always really interested in seeing anything that has anything to do with that aspect of it. Anything that will make me more efficient at what I'm doing, or different methods and ways to do things.
And are you feeling like you're getting a lot of that from Instagram and those kind of social platforms as well?
Yeah, I do. Those are a little bit more one-on-one. You can kind of directly ask somebody, but it's nice to get a really good overview. On Instagram, it's really hard to have like a full, from start to finish of any given project.
It's not. It's the downside of the self-shot work. I mean, you're never going to get both hands on there unless you're having somebody shoot video of you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what projects do you have going on right now? Like, are you in the midst of?
We have a pretty good-sized kitchen renovation that we're on the tail end of right now. We're doing some of the millwork install on that now that the cabinets are in and all that kind of thing. And that project has a lot of, just updating, going from a stipple ceiling to like smoothing out all the ceilings and painting all the ceilings and all that kind of stuff.
I've certainly been to Virginia, but I don't know much about what the houses are like in Virginia.
Like the style.
Yeah. Do you getting into work old houses, or is it?
There's areas depending on where in Virginia you are, but there's a small pocket of older homes in my area. I don't really work on those as much.
So what year are we generally in that you're talking about for houses? When doing remodels and
probably in like maybe the 90s.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
it's a relatively new housing stock.
I don't know if I've ever worked in a house from the 90s.
Yeah. Well, and it's very, you walk in, it's super dated. There's a lot of greens and pinks.
Yep.
And, different color schemes like that. So we're getting away from that.
Well, not only that, but you're dealing with where it was right in that time period when it was just starting to switch to more of like a building science mindset. So you're a lot of fiberglass and house wrap, a lot of probably interior vapor barriers, a lot of that stuff. So have you found that the building science stuff is applicable in your world, or are you pretty much just...
The building science thing is something that in my area, I think a lot of people don't educate themselves on what's out there. They're only doing what they're being told to do by the inspection department or whatever.
Right.
And so
what they have to do.
What they have to do, exactly. Yeah. They don't really understand why or the reason for it.
Uh-huh.
So that makes it challenging to know if what you're doing is right.
Yeah.
Just because you're just following the lead of somebody else.
That's a monumental shift in your market. If your clients aren't asking for it, if your inspectors aren't asking for it for a certain performance threshold or certain types of assemblies, then it's going to be that unique builder that's just going to take it upon themselves to like make it part of their business and make it part of their process.
When you're already being asked to do 100 things, to take on one voluntarily is a lot. Yeah. Especially if you don't know, if you're not convinced that it really matters.
And back to your question about the magazine, I get a lot of that kind of thing out of it too. Is what new products are out there, what new methods are there that is absolutely I'm not exposed to in my area. So it's nice to see there is something outside of our bubble
Yeah,
you know?
we're in a really weird time period where everybody's kind of inventing their own system. I mean, for so many decades, it was 2x4s, fiberglass bats, OSB or plywood, and house wrap.
Right.
And now it's like, and now we're using different studs, and we're doing double walls, and we're doing foam on the outside, and we're not doing foam on the outside. But it's like and everybody's, you know, these membranes and that, and it's complicated.
Yeah, like we're just now starting to see the zip system in my area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just now. Yeah.
Wow.
Like it's you know, rare to see maybe 2 or 3 houses
Like
with the green.
Like it wasn't easily available, or
it just wasn't stocked. It wasn't something that people were asking for yet.
Wow,
you know, and so
that's
it's
funny.
getting there. But it's we're, you know, our area is usually, I don't know, about 3 or 5 years behind the times. It seems like. So
what's your setup in terms of when you're doing the finished carpentry and for the kitchen you're talking about? Do you make your own cabinets, or are you installing?
No. We do like we're putting in some box beams and rerunning crown. And
Oh,
then
so you're not doing the cabinets?
No. We are probably going to get into installing them.
Yeah.
You know, with that kind of thing. A lot of times they're the semi-custom
Yeah.
cabinets and that kind of thing. And then if we deal with a custom cabinetry, then the builder, whoever's building the cabinets, would usually install them.
Okay, but for the semi-custom, you guys would do the install?
We're probably going to start.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been having a few issues with that. So.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens, where people start sliding into different parts of the world of carpentry just because they can't find somebody to do it the way that they want to get it done.
Right.
Yeah. And so are you mostly on site, or do you have a shop space that you guys work in?
We're mostly on site. I mean, I have a trailer, and we have like pretty much a mobile setup. I mean, I have a garage at my house that I can set up if I have to for certain projects, but most of the time we're on site.
Very cool.
That's cool. We had that conversation recently, a few episodes ago, as to like what's your preferred work setup, whether it's a van, truck, or trailer. So
yeah. Well, in my area, the trailer works great.
Yeah.
I can back it up to the site. I can leave it. I know a lot of people are, you know, concerned about leaving their trailer on site, you know, overnight or whatever, but in our area, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
So we can do that. I can drop it. I can leave the guys working. I can go check a job if I need to, and not pack up all the tools and, you know.
Yeah.
It's
cool. You can't do that in New York or Boston.
No.
Yeah.
So for guys who have never been to a conference or a show like this,
that's Andy. Andy's never been to a show like
yeah.
this.
So all right, so cool. So what are you looking forward to either checking out? What are your expectations for a show like this? What, given your business, like what value are you going to see?
What are you trying to get out of it?
I'm trying to see, again, kind of like the whole what's in our bubble. You know, I'm not exposed to a lot of the products and a lot of the you know, the tool manufacturers or different things that I see and I hear about, you know, on Instagram or through your magazine or the, you know. So it's nice to walk around and actually put your hands on some stuff and see what it's like.
And so can people expect to be checking out your Instagram page for photos of things you're finding, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be making some posts on that.
Beautiful.
On some different things.
I think he raises a good point. I think that we should try to focus some of the effort while we're at this show for just taking photos of products that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some of them are not even new to us at this point, but just.
Well, we
jaded.
live in a very we're super jaded.
We're like we're at like the center of it, so things are crossing us all the time, and it's easy to forget that in Lynchburg, Virginia, they haven't switched zip sheathing yet.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I mean, we just got the first like Fest tool. It's at the Benjamin Moore at the paint store, and it's like
really
it's the smallest like 4-foot section of sanders and that kind. But that's it. Like
Benjamin Moore.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
I guess it's a very like they're focusing on like, you know, sanding and that kind of thing for the paint. But that's it. That's all we've got.
All right. So will you do me a favor and you take as many pictures as you can of all the different products you're seeing? Anything that you go, and I know you just saw one, some door jam hanger thing.
Yeah.
What's the name of it? Do you remember the name? I already forgot.
I forgot.
All right. You'll take a picture of that and you'll post it. So people can go to modern_oak on Instagram and check out all the things that Andy's going to be posting. And we'll be doing the same thing. But it's a big show, so we'll all have to split up and tackle it. So check out Andy, and we'll be back for another episode here shortly. So stay tuned for that. Till next time, this is Justin saying happy building for Rob and Andy.